Donald Trump making yet another stop at Arizona.
We want people to come into our country, but they have to come into our country legally and properly vetted and in a manner that serves the national interest.
The Clinton campaign hoping to turn Arizona blue.
Arizona has been reliably Republican. It should not be a battleground state, but it is competitive because of the Republican nominee.
Less than 70 days until America elects its next president. This is Arizona Week. Hello, and thanks for joining us. Arizona is not considered a battleground state, but Donald Trump chose it to deliver his plans for immigration reform. This after meeting with Mexico's president.
Thank you, Phoenix. I am so glad to be back in Arizona, a state that has a very, very special place in my heart. I love the people of Arizona, and together we are going to win the White House in November.
The Republican nominee making his second stop in Arizona, flanked by the conservative who's who of the Grand Canyon state. Arizona's Treasurer Jeff DeWitt, Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babiou, and Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey jogging onto the stage and not mincing words.
It's time for national security. It's time for border security. It's time for a change. It's time for victory.
Making it clear whom he supports.
Donald Trump and Mike Pence will replace Justice Scalia with a conservative who will interpret the law according to the United States Constitution.
Trump traveled with his running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and 11 people whose loved ones were killed by undocumented immigrants.
All I can say is they murdered him, and if Mr. Trump had been in office then, the border would have been secure, and our children would not be dead today.
My name is Ruth Johnston Martin. My husband was shot by an illegal alien. He fought the good fight, but he took his last breath in 2002, and I support this man who is going to change this country for the better. God bless you.
That's tough stuff, I will tell you. That is tough stuff. Incredible people. So now is the time for these voices to be heard. Now is the time for the media to begin asking questions on their behalf. Now is the time for all of us as one country, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, to band together to deliver justice and safety and security for all Americans.
Trump spoke in Phoenix hours after meeting with Mexico's president.
We agreed on the importance of ending the illegal flow of drugs, cash, guns, and people across our border, and to put the cartels out of business.
Then, before thousands, released a 10-point plan for immigration.
People will know that you can't just smuggle in, hunker down, and wait to be legalized. Not going to work that way. Those days are over. We will break the cycle of amnesty and illegal immigration. We will break the cycle. There will be no amnesty. Our message to the world will be this: you cannot obtain legal status or become a citizen of the United States by illegally entering our country. Can't do it.
Bruce Ashe is a Republican National Committeeman and says Wednesday night's speech was a turning point for Donald Trump's campaign.
It was a great event. It was a triumphant day, maybe the best day of the entire campaign for Donald Trump. He acts and is presidential going to visit with the president of Mexico, Peña Nieto. They had a very substantive meeting. Certainly the outcome of that meeting with the president was that there is a very important and special relationship that exists between the people of Mexico and the United States. President Peña Nieto and Donald Trump both said was that it's very important for residents of America and residents of Mexico to be safe. And that's what the whole interest with immigration reform and with control of drug running and gun running and so on is just so important in today's world.
Donald Trump has been criticized for his comments about Mexico and Mexicans, yet here he is taking that step to meet with the president. But Hillary Clinton, his competitor, is not. What does that say?
Well, she also wasn't present for the floods in Louisiana. And for the last 3 weeks, Donald Trump has been running circles around his opponent, frankly, running circles around the President of the United States. In the election that we face, we have a candidate who is acting presidential. He is leading, and people are listening, and they're taking notice of that. The polls have changed dramatically over the past 3 weeks to a month or so. Hillary Clinton's lead has been shrinking. More importantly, in key battleground states, we now see a momentum going into what will be early voting in really just very, very few days in many states around the country. This is important, and I think the campaign is beginning to hit stride exactly when it has to. It certainly has had problems. Nobody's going to deny that. Probably Donald Trump would even admit that he's had some self-inflicted injuries, but when it comes to crunch time, Donald Trump has delivered every single time he's had to, whether it's in business or now in politics.
He's still taking hits, though, in the media and in public. So what does that say about people just maybe not accepting him just yet? I mean, was last night a turning point?
Well, I think there's been several turning points, but really, when the other side has to resort to calling him an anti-Semite and a racist, you know that they must not have a lot of substantive issues to discuss with him. They're defending the status quo on the Democratic side. This is the new normal that the Democrats and Hillary Clinton want everybody to believe. And nobody's satisfied with the new normal. Everybody wants there to be a change for the positive, whether it's in your pocketbook or feeling safe when we go into airports and large public events. I felt the same way at the Cleveland Convention just a few weeks ago. I was very reluctant to leave the security zone. And we feel that way so oftentimes when we're in large groups, football games, basketball games, and so on.
The criticism has been that it's not that feasible to send people home, bring them back. What is your response to that?
Some will and some won't. But for those who want to stay here and who want to live their lives and raise a family and earn a living and be able to support their family back home, there's no reason why they can't through a program of legalization, work legalization. It's a similar program that we've had for many, many years. The Democrat strategy for immigration reform is really an election strategy, because they figure, as with many other immigrant populations to this country, that there's a greater chance that those people who have come here under these circumstances might vote Democratic. This is not about winning elections. This is about keeping America safe and keeping America strong. And nobody can say that the immigrants who have come to this country from the beginning of time all the way up until today aren't a tremendous source of wealth and pride for our country. This is the melting pot for the entire world, and it's going to be that way in the future under a Donald Trump presidency.
Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto invited both nominees to Mexico for a meeting, and Donald Trump accepted, a meeting that is already being criticized. Here's Ana Ochoa O'Leary, head of the University of Arizona's Department of Mexican American Studies. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto invited both nominees, and Donald Trump is the only one who accepted his invitation thus far. Does that mean that he's open to working with Mexico? And what does it say about Hillary Clinton for not going there?
Trump, as we all know, looks for those opportunities to be in the limelight, to run the show, so to speak. It was an event, in my mind, that was intended to put him in front of the limelight. I don't know the reasons for Hillary Clinton not accepting. Most of these diplomatic trips take time to plan. to be able to get there and be able to say something of consequence. Trump is unaware of that process. I thought the images and the picture that I saw of him meeting with Peña Nieto was humiliating. Republicans think it was a great day for Trump. I saw him as a person who was silenced in many ways through this diplomatic exercise. Nothing was resolved. So what are we to derive from that? There was nothing of consequence that has emerged from that visit. And I think that Hillary Clinton, who is a more experienced diplomat, doesn't take those invitations lightly. I don't know that she said, I will go there, but I'm not going to go in a pinch. I'm not going to go immediately. I'm going to consider this invitation. I will think about what I would say. I would think about that meeting and plan it. So I think it's unfair to say that she refused to go. I don't know that we know that yet. And she is certainly a person who would measure her words and come from that meeting with whatever head of state with something to say about the relationships between our country and that other country, and move forward in a way that would benefit the United States, rather than making it a show for the purpose of stealing the limelight and detracting from the issues that should be talked about in this country at this presidential debate.
Traditionally, Mexican values have been pretty conservative. Why do you suppose, though, more Mexican Americans are not aligning themselves with the Republican Party?
Conservative Latinos might gravitate to some of the message because they are frustrated. They want to see something done. They might be thinking that by not voting for Hillary Clinton, at least we'll have someone who seems to know what he's doing. But I would say that most of those people that think that way are uninformed. They are low information voters. They have not seen the record of his administration of his businesses that have lost money, that have exploited workers, that have not had unpaid bills, that have gone bankrupt. So those more conservative Latino voters might be willfully ignorant of everything there is to know about what kind of President Trump would be.
All across the country, the nominees have set up offices. In Arizona, Brian Sitechek represents the Trump campaign. I spoke with Brian 2 weeks ago in Phoenix. Tell me how Donald Trump is faring in Arizona right now.
Well, he's doing very well here. It's a close race right now. Polls show that. But there's really a lot of support and enthusiasm for him. We have lots of volunteers. We've made thousands of calls. We have Trump Tuesday every Tuesday. We're expanding that to multiple locations. There's a huge clamoring for yard signs and hats and people to get involved. It's a little tricky with the primary here, so some folks who usually get involved are sort of involved in some other local races, but I expect after Labor Day there's going to be a tremendous amount of volunteer forces around the state.
There are people who are hearing this and saying that's not true. He doesn't have that star power in Arizona because of comments that have been made. How do you respond to that?
I just don't think that's true. I think that's a lot of wishful thinking. I know there's a lot of talk here about the Democrats spending a lot of money, and I say the more the merrier. Any dollars they spend here, they can't spend in true battleground states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida. So the more folks they want to hire here, the more time Hillary Clinton and Kaine want to spend here, the better it is for us. Let's look at how well Trump did in the primary. There were lots of questions about his ability to compete here, and he did very, very well. So I think Trump's going to be successful here. You know, as I'm sure you're aware, Arizona's only voted Democrat twice in the last 68 years, in 1948 and then last time in 1996. So this is Republican country here. I'm both hopeful and confident Trump is going to win in November.
Donald Trump has said some things that make people uncomfortable. How does your campaign sort of handle that, especially in a state like Arizona, high Latino population?
Well, he's not a traditional politician. And for some folks, that cuts both ways. And I think part of sort of some of the lagging in the polls is that he's not a traditional politician. Folks who a lot of folks paid attention in the primary. There was a lot of excitement, but a huge number of people really don't start paying attention until now. And I think they have to get comfortable with him. They have to hear what he has to say. I think his economic plan 2 weeks ago was a great start. His plan on Monday, fighting radical Islamic terrorism, lets folks know that the media narrative that he doesn't have a plan is really just a myth. And I think over time, as they hear more of his specific plans and see him in the debates, those sort of traditional Republicans are going to come on board in complete support of him.
There are some people who do not take Donald Trump seriously. Should they?
Well, I think there's 16 presidential candidates who would argue they didn't take him seriously right now, and most of them are home right now. So I think to do so is to do so at your own peril. I encourage the Democrats to continue that sort of chatter. Again, any underestimating of Mr. Trump or any resources they want to spend here, the more the merrier, the better it is for us.
For voters in Arizona, what kind of president would Donald Trump be for them in this state?
I think he'd be a very, very good president. Immigration and the border has turned out to be a huge issue in Arizona for years, really for decades, frankly. And I think Donald Trump has made it clear that securing the border is going to be an absolute priority. The fact is, a porous border is dangerous, not just for the state of Arizona, but for national security. I think that's one of the reasons why he did so well in the primary, and I think that will resonate with voters of all political stripes who understand what a porous border means for us. Arizona is the front line. A porous border affects the whole country, but less so certainly in states like Pennsylvania or Illinois or other places. Arizona is the front line for this, and I think that issue specifically will resonate with voters.
What is your campaign doing right now to ramp up support in this state?
As I said before, we have Trump Tuesday. We make thousands of calls every Tuesday night. We're expanding that to other nights later on in the month. We have 5 locations that are making calls tonight. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday at noon with over 160 volunteers. Folks came in from across the state. We're distributing yard signs. It's our intention to get out 30,000 yard signs for Trump, which would be a record, I'm told, here in the state of Arizona. And the real problem that we have, frankly, is channeling the enthusiasm. It's getting all these folks who want to be involved enough to do. It takes a lot of logistics to do that, and that's our challenge to do as a campaign, and we're off to a great start.
On the Democratic side, Seth Scott represents the Hillary Clinton campaign in Arizona.
Well, we're really excited about the possibilities in Arizona. And so I've come on board over the last month. We've hired an outreach and Latino vote director, and we're working really hand in hand with the Arizona Democratic Party and the coordinated campaign. And we have a series of offices all over the state, 24 offices across the state of Arizona, because what we're committed to doing is talking to every single voter during this election cycle and talking about how Hillary Clinton has a plan to create jobs, how she has a plan to improve our economy, how she has a plan to improve education, fix our broken immigration system. And so that's what we're really doing. And the 24 offices we have across the state, we're talking to voters every single day.
We haven't seen Hillary Clinton in a while. Why is that? What does that mean for Arizona when it comes to really getting those voters to support her?
Well, we don't have any updates on her schedule yet, but what we are doing is working on the ground. We're really talking to voters, and we're finding that that's really what matters. And so from our own campaign, from our work with the Arizona Democratic Party, we have a new opportunity because of the divisiveness and the extreme rhetoric we see coming from the Republican nominee for president to really engage voters that we haven't talked to. So many new doors are opening, and we're continuing to take advantage of them, walk through them, talk to voters about what matters here in Arizona.
When voters become talkative about the issues with Donald Trump, and then they look at the issues surrounding Hillary Clinton, the email scandal, for example, what is your message to them to divert their attention from that?
Well, what we are finding is that the extreme divisiveness we're seeing from Donald Trump is really opening the door for us to be able to talk to folks. We have people come into our office and say, 3 months ago I was a Republican, I'm changing and I'm volunteering for Hillary Clinton because the stakes in this race are so enormous. And that's really what people understand. You know, there's a lot of discussion in the media, but I think people here in Arizona understand the choice when it comes to our economy, when it comes to immigration. This idea of mass deportation that Donald Trump has doubled down on would be reckless. And it'd be terrible for Arizona and for our economy, all the thousands, tens of thousands of jobs that rely on trade here in Arizona. Arizonans know what's at stake in this election, and that's really what we're hearing from voters.
Why is Hillary Clinton the candidate to represent Arizona?
Well, because Hillary Clinton is the only candidate who can fix our broken immigration system in a way that preserves our economy and keeps families together. This idea of mass deportation and the hateful rhetoric we've seen from the other side is really unfortunate. It doesn't resonate here in Arizona. I think she is the only candidate who's offered a plan that's going to create jobs, invest in our infrastructure here in Arizona, give our local schools the tools they need to teach kids computer science. Innovation is the wave of the future. Our economy is based on innovation, and she's really the candidate who's prepared to lead.
Hillary Clinton has not accepted the invitation to visit Mexico. What does that say, if anything at all?
Well, I think it's very clear that she's the person who has a plan to grow our economy. So it doesn't matter really what invitations we accept. It matters what her plan is for the American people. And she's the person who can fix the immigration system. Working in a bipartisan way with Senator Flake and many others here in Arizona and in Washington, D.C. to provide solutions that are going to work for Arizona and really the entire country.
The last time Arizona voted Democrat was in '96, and it was for a Clinton.
It was for a Clinton, and we didn't think we would have an opportunity like this so soon. I know 20 years doesn't seem like it soon, but this has been a reliably Republican state for years. And the reality is that it shouldn't be competitive in Arizona. But it is because we have a Republican nominee in Donald Trump who has doubled down on divisiveness and extreme rhetoric, and that's not really playing well here in Arizona. People in Arizona understand that diversity is our strength and that we have to have an immigration plan that works, that mass deportation is not the solution, that we have to keep families together. And that's why truly every single day someone calls our office, sends an email, walks in and says, "This is the most important election of my lifetime. I can't let Donald Trump become president. Hillary Clinton has the right solutions, and I'm here to work for her."
And to wrap up this week's political news, here's Luigi Del Puerto. We begin with his analysis of Tuesday's primary.
Well, John McCain handily defeated Kelly Ward, which, as you mentioned, wasn't a surprise at all. For months now, Kelly Ward has run what many had regarded as an underdog campaign. Her campaign didn't really catch on, and she didn't have the money to compete against John McCain, nor the stature to compete against someone as well known, as prominent as the incumbent U.S. Senator. And so John McCain crushed Kelly Ward by, last time I looked, it was about 12 points. The polls had John McCain winning by 21 points. And so the margin of victory wasn't as wide as the polls had predicted, but it was still a pretty dominant performance by the incumbent U.S. Senator.
Kelly Ward might not necessarily say that it was a crushing defeat, but she did get closer than most people have in the past to John McCain. Will Ann Kirkpatrick, the Democrat, have that same issue?
Well, so the primary race is as you know, different from a general election race, and so John McCain would start to pivot, if you will, to the center in order to attract the voters that he had attracted before, independents, Democrats that lean conservative. It's going to be a completely different race, and it all comes down to who wants it more. Of course, John McCain has the advantage in this race. He is more well known than Ann Kirkpatrick, and truly, we've heard from people who said this is going to be a referendum on John McCain, regardless of what happens in the presidential race. As you know, Ann Kirkpatrick's campaign has repeatedly tied John McCain to Donald Trump, hoping that Donald Trump's unpopularity among voters would drag him down. That remains to be seen. But as you have seen last night, now John McCain won by a wide margin, and that should be problematic for Ann Kirkpatrick.
Luigi, how do names like Donald Trump play into this? I mean, here he is making his second trip to Arizona in a very short span of time, bringing his running mate with him, talking about immigration. How will that factor down the ticket when you talk about that Republican stronghold in Arizona?
Well, we've already seen how Donald Trump has. Or his name, his race, his unconventional race has sort of entered not just the U.S. Senate race, but other races as well. And anticipate that Ann Kirkpatrick will continue to try and tie Donald Trump around John McCain's neck, and in the hopes that that would drag him down. Whatever Donald Trump says that is controversial will be used by Ann Kirkpatrick against John McCain, and try to paint paint the U.S. senator as someone who wouldn't even stand up for his principles because he's so afraid of Donald Trump, or he's just any other politician. He's pandering to his base, and even if he's being mocked by Donald Trump, as you know, the GOP nominee has mocked John McCain's war record. I am sure that Ann Kirkpatrick will use whatever Donald Trump will say and try to corner John McCain and get him to respond. We will know if Arizona truly is competitive if we see the Hillary Clinton campaign spending a whole lot of money here, not just on ground forces, not just on hiring staffers to go out and knock on doors, but when it comes to TV advertising. And if we see her campaign spending those resources here in the state, then perhaps the state is going to be competitive. But until then the prevailing wisdom, the prevailing sentiment is that Donald Trump will win Arizona pretty handily in November.
And Governor Pence has been here pretty recently. For him to return so quickly, does that indicate that they would like to continue to keep Arizona a stronghold, or are they worried that the color could be changing? We've heard it could be making its way toward purple this time around.
They're here. Those two nominees are here. They're spending money here, which is puzzling to many people. I mean, if Arizona truly is a red state, and the polls have shown, there was a CNN poll just a couple of days ago showing Donald Trump ahead, that if this is such a safe state, then why is it spending resources here? Why is it spending a whole lot of money and not concentrating on battleground states? Now, of course, as you know, Donald Trump began his campaign with, by walking down the elevator and giving that speech that was quite offensive to Mexican Americans and to Mexico. And then immediately after that, he went to Phoenix and really launched his campaign here by focusing on, among other issues, illegal immigration, a very important topic to our state. And for him so it sort of makes sense for him to come back here. And if he's making a big speech on illegal immigration, then this would be sort of the natural place to do it.
And that's our program. Before we go, a programming note. Arizona Week will not broadcast next week. We'll return on Friday, September 16th. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us.